This is Rabbi Menache speaking. I'm a Rebbe in the morning and I also teach in the afternoon. And I want to share with you something that will change your life. Just listening to this. It'll make a tremendous change. And there's also a zechus for my mother. She was recently nifter. Luna Basdona. As Hashem, her neshama should have an aliyah just from anybody listening to this. The Gemara in Kuf Yotes Amud Beis in Shabbos says, Amar Yeshua ben Levi. Yeshua ben Levi says, Amen Yehi Shmei Raba. Anyone who answers Amen Yehi Shmei Raba b'kol koicha, with all his strength, koirin lo gizar din. They rip up a decree upon him. And two Rishonim have a girsa, afilu shivim shana, even 70 years, a decree that was full from the beginning to end. They rip it up. The Maharal says, even a gzera that was written when a person was born, a person could be born to live only 40 years, and a person says, one Yehi Shmei Raba, the right time, the right place with the kavana, they rip up a decree of Karnaman. Rashi says, what does it mean, B'kol koichai? 2 words. Rashi says, B'kol kavanasai. All you have to do is think of the taich. Amen. Kaddish means you're asking Kaddish Baruch Hu, you're asking that Hashem's name should be great and praised all over the world. And Amen means it's true. Yehi Shmei Raba, let his great name, Mivarach, should be praised, recognized, blessed. La'olam, forever, forever and ever. Which one pshat is this world, Mashiach and Amhab. That means if a person just thinks, when he says the word, Amen, it's true. Yehi Shmei Raba, let his great name Mevarach should be praised, recognized forever. This world, Mashiach and Ayim Habit, just thinking of those words, they rip up a decree upon him. Toysis agrees to Rashi, and he just adds that he brings a pesikta that says from Tanoim that when the people in Klais, when the people go into Beis Knesses and they answer B'kol Ram, they rip up Gezeris Kashais. So here we have a guaranteed Gemara, open Gemara. Shulban Levi says it. Doesn't say maybe. About 7 years ago, they used to say impossible. It doesn't say possible. The Gemara says a fact. Anybody wants. A person rips up. 2 Rishonim bring down. You have a guaranteed chelik in Ohaba if you say it just once the right way. Chavetz Chaim brings down a story in the time of he has a letter that it's from 1914. I'm going to quote the letter in English. It is impossible to fathom the number of salvations that can be brought about for Klal Yisrael if we were to indeed respond Amen Yehi Shmei Raba in unison every day. In this way, thousands of people could be saved from death. This was right by World War I started, and the Chavetz Chaim was in the letter was saying, with the power of Yehi Shmei Raba, we cannot fathom. It rips up decrees and could save thousands and thousands of people from death. Actually, Rav Dan Segel, during the Gulf War, he said this, it was a big thing. He said that people should go into the shuls right then and there and say Yehi Shmei Raba, and that will prevent and save a lot of people from death. I'm going to share with you a story, a very powerful story that happened about over 100 years ago. Actually around that time, there was a man that was in the hospital. He was very sick, and there were 2 brothers, and they knew that their father was very, very sick. They didn't know what to do, and they found out he was mamish about to die, and they went to the Alter Nevardik. And they asked him, what can we do? Bracha, what should, please give us something. How can we save our father? And he says, there is something you could do. There is something you could do. He says, it's more powerful than any prayers of mine. Whatever bracha I'm going to give you, he says, there's something even greater than anything I can do for you. He took out a big Gemara and he read it. He said, anyone who says, Yehi Shmei Raba, koirin lo gizar din, they rip up a decree. An illness is a harsh decree. The cure is you got to tear up the decree. Right now there's a gzeira. You got to rip it up. Say it with all your full concentration. Say it loud. That will make your father get better. It was time of mincha, and they needed to get a minyan. So they knew that this was pikuach nefesh. They left the hospital, hurried to a nearby shul somewhere to daven, but it was hard because they knew their father was about to die. They stood at the door of the shul begging people, please come, we need a minyan, it's pikuach nefesh. People had Rahmanis, and Baruch Hashem, they made a minyan. The brothers prayed, they prayed with such strength. When the Chazan said Kaddish, the brothers said Yehi Shmei Raba with such a power. There was loud answer, was nothing. You can't even imagine. People were like surprised from such a Yehi Shmei Raba. And they went back to the hospital. And there were a bunch of doctors by the father's bed. They were like worried, what was this? And what happened was the father opened his eyes. They saw Mechayim Meisa Mamish. The doctors wanted to see, how is it possible a person who is about to die come out of the dead, come to life? And amazing, he was trying to get out of bed. And eventually this man who was in the hospital about to die came out walking, totally, fully healed. And the doctors had no answer because they didn't give him any medicine. There was nothing to do. He came out of the dead just from what? 2 brothers. And I know personally myself, I know there were a couple of times that I had a situation where I knew myself that somebody was in pikuach nefesh, and I did have in mind, and I saw my own eyes, Yeshua's. And we know I think it's the Chazal say the world stands on 2 things. What's these 2 things? That before when a person comes early in the morning, when he comes to Shachris, there is in the olden days they used to learn, and then they used to come in. There was a Kaddish, the Rabbanan Al Yisrael Kaddish, very powerful Kaddish. So the Chazal say that the learning together with the Kaddish of Al Yisrael in the morning, put that together, which is one of the most powerful Kaddishes of all. Put that together, that keeps the world going. We have no idea how much power we have. A person says Yehi Shmei Raba the right way. People looking for things. Here it is. The Chafetz Chaim said that in a letter. He wrote a letter. That he said that people are looking all for the segulas. They trying to do fasting. They're trying to spend thousands of dollars on things to try to find ways to get the Yeshuas. He says all they have to do is answer Amen Yehi Shmei Raba. That comes easy for a person, and this is mamish Yeshua from personal and for general, for all things in life. People are looking around for anything. Sometimes a person doesn't realize he's in the shul, and all of a sudden you have 2 Kaddishes a lot of times in the early morning, if you Nusach Ashkenaz, or one by Nusach Sfard, and all of a sudden people sometimes walk out before the Kaddish, go get a coffee or tea. Here you have an opportunity to change the world, change your life. Things that you don't even realize. So many things you think, oh, you had a very beautiful life. You don't realize if you said because of the Yehi Shmei Raba, is that you did say with Kavanah, that was the reason why you had a better life, because it ripped up Gezeris. We don't know. We think like, okay, Baruch Hashem, person lives a life, but he doesn't realize there are Gezeris that we need to rip up. There was a mice with the Alta of Sabatka. After he was nifter, he came to his son in the dream. It was this is a famous thing. And he said, please send me packages. Please send me packages. What was the packages? He told him, please go say Kaddish for me and get people to say Amen Yehi Shmei Raba. This is the way I will get by the have Yehi Shmei Rabas. That will be a way to get gifts and packages in Shemayim. How powerful it is. There was a story where a person had his wife had Rachmana litzlan a machla that was terminal, and they gave him 3 months to live. The doctor said, "I'm sorry to tell you, you have 3 months to live." And the husband was going crazy. This was in Eretz Yisrael. He didn't know what to do. He was trying to figure out. He decided, you know what? I'm going to daven in a different shul. He went to a shul called Shomer Munim in Eretz Yisrael, and he knew that they were very, very careful with Amens and Yehi Shmei Rabas. And while he was walking through the streets of Yerushalayim, he kept saying about that Gemara. I know the Gemara says, they rip up. He decided that that's the only way. It's more important, more than any medical thing in the world. That's going to be the way. So he went to that shul and he davened in the shul, and he had the kavanah the right way. And a few months later, he went back to the doctor to do tests. After he finished, the doctor's face was shocked, and he asked her to do it again. I want to do the test again. And the second time, he said, I don't understand. It's a miracle. The machla disappeared. The machla is gone. And he couldn't understand. The doctor, you can't explain it to the doctor. But the answer is because when a person says Yehi Shmei Raba, it rips up. It's very, very powerful. The Zohar Kaddish says something amazing. The Zohar Kaddish says that if a person wants to take out from a person, from Gehenna, It actually saves a person from Gehenna, and even Rahman al-San, if the person needs to go to Gehenna, it will save even himself. So you pull out people from Gehenna just by having kavanah in Yehi Shmei Raba. It has such a power to change a person's life. I'm going to share with you a very powerful story now. It was from in Eretz Yisrael. That happened in Eretz Yisrael. There was somebody who had a lot of tzaros. He had, number one, he had he had no children for many years, and number two, he had tremendous debt. He owed a lot of money, and finally he was not feeling well. And the doctor says, you have to do tests. It could be you're very sick, and he couldn't believe it. He was a ben Torah in Eretz Yisrael. And he was shocked. He's like, what should I do? Baruch Hashem, he was learning, and he was involved in Torah. So he went to a big Rosh Yeshiva in Bnei Brak. And the Rosh Yeshiva says, this is too much for me. We have to go to Rav Steinman. And they went to Rav Steinman, and they asked him, what is, we don't know what to, the Rosh Yeshiva told me, he said, I don't know what to do. Maybe Rav Steinman could guide us. What can he do? So Steinman says, yes, there is a way to do something. He says, what you should do, I'm going to give you a mashal to understand what you should do. There was a mashal, there was a king once. And this king, he was such a good king to the people. And the people didn't listen to him. They weren't following his laws, and he felt very bad. He was so good to people, lowering the taxes, trying to do everything for the people, but they didn't listen. There was one man who came over, he says, Your Majesty, I know how to play musical instruments. I know how to make you feel happy. And he did that. And he played the musical instruments for the king, and he made the king so happy. The happy king said, give him whatever he wants. He's so special. He's the one who cares about the king. He said, give him whatever he wants. And the people said, okay, we'll give him gold, silver, whatever he wants. So Rav Steinman says, in this world, the Eibush is the king. He said, the Kaddish Baruch Hu does so much for us. He does so much chesed from day and night. We can't mastic until 220 find out how much the Eibishter really did for us. But even simpler, what we see, what he does for us so much, and we don't listen to his laws. And there's one man who cares about HaKadosh Baruch Hu's name. When it says the Kaddish, Yehi Shmei Raba, Hashem's name should become great, which is talking about Mashiach. And then he answers, Yehi Shmei Raba, let his great name and Varach should be praised, recognized, which is when Mashiach comes, that we should want him to come. And all of a sudden he says that with Kavanah, Eibush says, give him whatever he wants, whatever he needs, sickness, this, healing, anything. So Steinman told him, he says, you know what you have to do. And he left. And right away he was machazik to have kavanah. And he went to the shuls. He was learning Baruch Hashem, but he went and he heard a lot of Yehi Shmei Raba, a lot of Kaddishes with tremendous kavanah. And he started doing this. And a few months, 3-4 months later, he came back to Rosh Diamond and he said, Rebbe, Shiva, I can't believe it. He says, I did what you said. And then I got a phone call. Somebody called me up and he told me that he's willing to lend me all the money that I owe. And he says, all I have to do is pay him small amounts every month, and for many years, man. But Baruch Hashem, I don't have to have the debt. I have small amounts to pay. And then I went to the doctor, and the doctor did the test on me again, and he says, no, you see that it's not the machla, Baruch Hashem. He says it's something small, and Baruch Hashem, I'm healthy. And my wife just went to the doctor, and she's pregnant. And Rosh Steinman was so happy to hear this. He gave him a bracha. And he says, we saw this man, saw his own eyes. What a power it is. He did it for 3-4 months. You don't realize the Brisker Rav, when he got to Eretz Yisrael after World War II, and he came into the shuls, he said a shocking statement, something beyond shocking. He came in and he's so inspired. He saw the people say the way they said Yehi Shmei Raba goes like this. He said, now I know why. Yemach Shemam, the Nazis couldn't get into Eretz Yisrael because the Yehi Shmei Rabas of Eretz Yisrael saved them. And which is very, very shocking. That means a little bit, if you go a little deeper into what the Brisker Rav said, that means if there would have been more powerful Yehi Shmei Rabas, we would have been able to do something, maybe change the Gezeirah to at least halfway something. We would have been able to save maybe 1 million or millions of people. If the whole world the Klal Yisrael would have said Yehi Shmei Raba with the trained power as an Eretz Yisrael, it would have made a change. The Brisker Rav came out of his mouth. He said this. We have no idea how much power we have. But you know what? It's not only for biggest, very, very big things. Even sometimes a person is smaller things, and even it doesn't matter. I teach in a school in the afternoon, and I've heard hundreds, and I've read, people gave me letters and paper sheets of stories over the last 7-8 years I'm there, and I have hundreds and hundreds of stories of great, powerful ones, and also the smaller stories. And I'm going to share with you a few stories, just a few of the hundreds of stories that I was sent by boys. And I'll tell you right now, one of them was, there was a true story about 4 years ago. There were 3 boys. And even to get out of trouble, it sounds strange, but anybody hears this, you have a problem with money, you have a problem with this trouble. He says, you could use it for this also. I think it's better not to, personally, because you need to use it, for the zechus, for Kaddish Baruch Hu. But if you really desperately need it, do it. There was 3 boys in a class, and the 3 boys told it to me personally, and they told it me, I think it was in 6th grade, and they said they were supposed to take 4 spelling tests in the school. Later in the year, they had to make it up. And they didn't want to take these 4 spelling tests. And they heard my stories in the school. I tell the stories. They said, you know what? We're going to have in mind Yehi Shmei Raba, the day they were supposed to take the spelling test. So all three of them had in mind, I think, one day, the day they were supposed to take the test, Yehi Shmei Raba, let Hashem take off this decree. Okay, in their minds, the decree of spelling test. They came in, the teacher was absent. They couldn't believe it. The second day, they did the same thing. The teacher was absent again. And the 3rd day, they came in, the teacher came in, and they had him on Yehi Shmei Raba, and this time the teacher forgot to give it to them. Okay, the 4th day they'll get it. The 4th day said, let's do it again. Yehi Shmei Raba, the 4th day, the teacher was absent again. And once the teacher was absent for so many days and missed it, he said in the end result, they never took the 4 spelling tests. And one boy told me in the class, he said, that were the only 3 days of the year that the teacher was absent. He was never absent. And I heard the story again the year after. I taught them again, and they reminded me. I wanted to hear the story again. That's a small story, but actually a few other stories in the Cheder I just to share with you. There was a boy in the class that told me his girl cousin was actually dying, Rahman al-Islam. They actually brought, I think it was a helicopter to bring her to a different hospital, I think to Philly, I forgot which hospital it was, and his mother told him that be careful, beware, she might, Rahman al-Islam, looks like she might be nifter. And he was shocked, and he told me, I decided I'm going to say Yehi Shmei Raba with all my might for her. It's my first cousin, whatever, I want to do it. And he told me, he wrote in a letter, he didn't tell me, he just wrote it to me. I tell boys always tell me to write it to me. And he wrote it to me, and he said after a while, he heard that she was getting a little better. And eventually, she got totally 100% Baruch Hashem before Shlema. And I had somebody else that told me that he had in mind for somebody, I think it was his aunt. She had no children for 7 years. I forgot which relative it was. For 7 years, so he did it for about a year, and they had a child about a year later. I don't remember if they got pregnant right away or it was about a year later. This was a bunch of years ago. And I even had something a little stranger. It was an 8th grade boy. He told me the story. He said what happened was there was somebody who had a mesifta. And he had met the grandfather of 3 kids that were applying. There were 3 cousins were applying to get into Mesifta, and the principal told the Rosh Yeshiva principal told the grandfather, "I'm sorry, I could only take 2 of your 3 grandchildren. That means even if all 3 do well in the Faher, I could only take 2. It's not good for the 9th grade to have all 3 cousins in one class." So he said, "Okay." They took the first 2 cousins took the Faher, and they got in. And the boy in the Cheder, he's about to take the fire, and he's like, "How am I going to get in?" He said, "Wait, I'm going to do Yehi Shmei Raba." And he did it with great kavanah. And in the end result, he went for the fire, and you won't believe it. They took and they accepted him. He didn't say a word, and he was shocked. Here he got in. Here you see stories that I have so many strange stories of people at Yeshua, detention, suspend, all kinds of, you want to get out of trouble, but I don't like using it, but it's just to show you that in Shemayim, the Eibishter loves it. You do it, but really the most best, beautiful kavanah is for Kaddish Baruch Hu. Now I'm going to share you with a story that's mind-boggling. I'm going to make it a little shorter, but really it's probably one of the most powerful stories you'll hear. And it's a story that I know, that I got personally. I'll tell you how I got the story, and I know it's a personal story. It was with me, I was involved in the story. I was davening in a shul in Lakewood, and a man came over to me. This is about 6 years ago. Now, the way I say it is I try to say it loud, and I try to say it with strength. And Baruch Hashem, I try. And I was in the shul, and after davening, he taps me on the shoulder. I look back, and I see the man from shul. I don't really know him personally. I just, I say, hello, good morning, Shabbos. And he goes to me and he says, I want to tell you a story I never told anyone in my life, even my wife. Now, when I heard that, I said, oh, I better listen very closely. I knew the story was going to be great. It was amazing, and it really was. He told me, he says, now I know he's about 60, 61, I think he is. And at that time, well, let's say he was 54, 53. So he told me when he was in the end of 5th grade, or the story happened the end of 5th or end of 6th grade. And I made the calculations, so if he's 60 now, it was basically 50 years ago. So 1972, let's say. It would be about 1972. So he told me that he was a troublemaker in school. And he says, he wasn't like a bum, but he was like, he liked to make trouble. And he got into trouble after he did it. And he got sent to the office. He got into a lot of problems during the year. Towards the end of the year, he had to meet with the principal. And the principal told him, listen, that's it. It's your last chance. If you do one more thing like this, you're expelled from the school. Anything you do now was not suspending you, and not detentions. You are out of this school. And he says I don't care he was very strict, very strong with him. And he realized, he has to be very careful. Very, very careful. Now, he was going to sleepaway camp. He lived in Brooklyn. And he was going to sleepaway camp. And he knows when he's going to sleepaway camp, there were rebbes from the school, and there were people, there were people involved in the school that was in the camp. So he knew that he also has to be very careful in camp. And he came into this camp, and there was one rule in the camp. No one is allowed to bring fireworks into camp. That was a very strict rule. Anybody bringing fireworks will be thrown out of the camp without any chance. Right away, out of the camp. And he wouldn't bring it, but there was a boy in the camp that brought fireworks. And he was looking for somebody to join him. And he wanted this boy, the one who told me the story, the man. He said, will you join me? Now, he was afraid to join him, but he got reassured, okay, he's not going to get caught. And, being like wanting to make trouble, this is an exciting thing, to make fireworks. And they had plans. And they worked together, and it was very exciting, but he knew he cannot get caught. He gets caught, he's finished. Thrown out of his camp, thrown out of school, because there are people from the school from the camp, connected to the school, and they had it all planned out. They had the big firecracker, and they had whole matches, which was very dangerous. And in the end result, to make it short, he actually got caught, him and his friend, the other guy. And the head of the camp was so mad. What? You're out of this camp today. You're finished. You and him and the two boys there, God, that's it. And in the end result, the other boy was finished, but there was an announcement. Everybody come into the shul to daven. I think it was Ma'ariv. And he said, everybody come to the shul to go daven. And they came to shul. He was broken, the boy. He said, what am I going to do? I'm finished. No more school, no more camp. I don't know where my life is over. Basically, in his mind, that was the end of his life. Who knows what's going to be? And he didn't know what. His parents were going to destroy him, the school, everything. He's finished. And he comes to the shul. And a lot of places in camp, sleepaway camp, day camp, sometimes they have speakers. Sometimes before, like 10 minutes to speak a little divrei Torah. And there was a speaker. He wasn't sure who it was. He said it could be his Rebbe Bender from Far Rockaway. He wasn't sure who it was. And the man went up to speak. And there was a Rebbe, whatever. And he said, boys, I want to tell you something. I have a present. I want to give you something so amazing and so special. Oh, wow, something special, like a present. He says, and he tells them the Gemara of Kuf Yudez Amid Beis in Shabbos. Anyone who says, Amen Yehi Shmei Raba b'kol koicha, he says those words and he thinks of the Taich. That Hashem's name should be praised this world forever, this world, Mashiach HaMabed, forever. Just pray, thinking of the Taich. They rip up a decree. What Taisa says it loud, you're supposed to say it loud. Rip it up. And he said a bunch of stories. There's different stories there to machazik it. And this boy hears this. He says, wait a second. He was a pretty smart boy. He said, wait a second. I right now have a massive decree on me. I'm finished. My life's over. I can rip it up now. And he decides, maybe the first time in his life could be, he says, I am going to have kavanah in Yehi Shmei Raba. And he goes out, and when the Chazan says Yehi Shmei Raba, the Kaddish, he goes and he says it loud, and he thinks, and he says it with kavanah. And if it was either 2 or 3 Yehi Shmei Raba Kaddishes in the Ma'ariv, and he really did it good. I said, wait a second, maybe I ripped it up. Who knows? And a little while later, I don't know how many hours, a bunch of hours, the head of the camp comes by to him. And he says, and he's like, uh-oh. He says, where's your parents? Turns to him. And he goes, I don't know. He says, your parents have to pick you up tonight. That's it. You will not be in camp tomorrow. You're finished. There's no way. Where's your parents? He says, I don't know. Okay, give me your uncle's number. I'm going to call them also. You got to get out of this camp. You're not part of this camp anymore. You're leaving tonight. That's it. He got his uncle's number, and they couldn't reach them. And he says, you're getting out tonight. That's it. You got to get your stuff ready. We're going to get you out. You're not going to be here tomorrow. And he goes to his bunk, and he gets his bed ready, but he's thinking, wait a second, I did say Yehi Shmei Raba. And he's thinking, maybe he did something. He doesn't know, but he remembers what the Rebbe said, the Rav said. I don't know. He had a few of them. And he comes in there, the boys are all looking at him like, oh, poor guy, he's leaving. Maybe many of them probably said bye to him. And he comes there, and he goes to the bed. And the head of the camp is meanwhile calling and calling, nothing, no answer to the uncle, no answer to the parents. And he realized, I don't know what to do, how long he could stay up at night. And the next morning, the boy is still in camp. And he comes to Shachris, everybody, whoa. He's in Shachris, and this time he says, wait a second. Shachris has much more Yehi Shmei Rabas than what Ma'ariv had. And this time, again, he's davening. He says Yehi Shmei Raba, and he's answering. And he's really not asking Hashem, I need to please save me from this decree. How? I don't know. And meanwhile, the head of the camp was really not happy with him. You're not in this camp. You go to this, there was like a building of little kids, whatever, there was other activities. He says, you're not part of the activities, nothing. Basically, the only thing you're going to do is you're going to maybe daven. We'll give you, you'll eat privately, breakfast, lunch, supper. We'll give you books to read. And the entire day he was in that building, but he was wondering, who knows how I'm going to get out of this decree. And the mincha came, Ma'ariv came, 1 day passed, 2 days passed, and 3 days passed. And they're looking for that, can't reach his parents. 3 days later, and he knows he's been saying many Yehi Shmei Rabas, many things trying to rip up. And 3 days later, a Rebbe of the camp comes over to the head of the camp. And he starts talking to him. He says, what's doing with this boy? He says, I'm trying to get him. He says, why don't you give him another chance? Huh? Yes, give him another chance. This Rebbe was a very good Rebbe. He's not a bad kid. He messed up. He did fireworks. Now look at him. Even the way he died. Look, he's not a bad kid. Give him another chance. And the head of the camp was a little bit like, whoa. He sees that the Rebbe's like saying, what's wrong? Why not? And he had to give in. And in the end result, he gave in to the Rebbe and said, okay. When he heard the news, he went crazy. What? I can't believe it ripped up. I don't believe it. He couldn't believe the power beyond his imagination, how he could rip up a decree of something that was basically sealed. Miraculously, and he also was wondering what's doing with his parents and everything. He's like, what's happening? But he knows he's not stopping. He continued having kavanah. 1 day, week, 2, and then he finally calls his parents. I don't know, a week, 2 weeks later, he says, and he speaks to his parents, and he's telling like, yes, how are you doing? How are you? He asked, she or the mother or father asked him, how are you doing? Yes, he never told them. He got into trouble. I'm doing good. No, he didn't want to say anything. And then he tells his parents, like, were you home the whole summer? And finally, they told him that they went to some kind of little vacation in some hotels on the way around America, different states. And he's like wondering, wow, the time was beyond imagination. That means those days that he was thrown out, they weren't home. They would have went any other days. They would have been home. They would have answered the phone. They would have picked him up. But because he had in mind Yehi Shmei Raba, he said to himself, wait a second. He was a smart kid. He says, why should I stop? I saw the power with my own eyes. I'm going to continue. He said he continued for years. He wanted to go to Mesivta, get married. He said, I'm going to continue. I need all the zechusim I can get. He did it for years and many, many, many years. And now already he's marrying off his children. He has one. He has a son that's learning many Masechta made a siyum. I was by one of his siyum, big chashav Talmid Chacham, and he tells me 2 lines. I don't think I'll ever forget. He says to me, I think that all my zechusim in life, he's about a little over 60 now, every single good thing that I have in life, he's also a millionaire also, gives a lot, stockers and everything. He says, I think everything I have in life, my children, my grandchildren, my zechusim, my family, everything, and hatzlacha, and also he has a hatzlacha and money people don't understand. I once overheard somebody say, well, nobody knows, why does he have so much on money? He has something low, not normal. And nobody knows. I think I'm the only person maybe that knows because he never told the story to anybody else. And I don't tell anybody his name. But I think the reason is, in my head I know this, is because he told me this. He said, I've been doing it since then. He says, I think all my hatzlacha in life is all from that Yehi Shmei Raba that I've been saying it now for 50 years. At that time he told me it was like 44. He says now he's been saying it for 50 years. 50 years of Yehi Shmei Rabas with Kavanah. He says, I think everything I have is from that. Then he adds me 2 more words. He said, I saw you saying, the Yehi Shmei Raba loud. And he tells me 2 words. He says, don't stop. He knows I've been doing it for years. He says, but maybe I'll stop. Maybe one day I'll say, you know what? I said a lot of Yehi Shmei Rabas, I'll take a little break. He says, no. You need it till 120. Every Yehi Shmei Raba, one of them, rips up 2, 5, 10. There is a boy in the cheder. This is amazing. When I see his face, now I think he's in 8th grade. There's a boy in the cheder that that gives me, I have pleasure from him. He told me. He lives next to a shul in Lakewood, and he himself goes a lot of times to answer a lot of Yehi Shmei Rabas. I remember one summer he told me this, and he said to me he has over 10,000 Yehi Shmei Rabas, and I know him. I know it's with Kavanah. I don't know which level of Kavanah, but 10,000. I said, what? He probably saved who knows how many people from death. Who knows how many Yeshuas came from one boy in the cheder. A boy that really understands and feels the greatness of what you can do. Anybody who hears this should understand how special it is. You have an opportunity to change worlds. Somebody once came to one of the Gedolim of a generation, maybe 2 generations ago, Baba Sali, and they said, please give us a bracha. And his brachas used to work, tremendous brachas. He says, why are you coming to me? He says, why do you have to come to me? He says, you have an easy thing that's much more powerful than my bracha. They said, what? Saying Yehi Shmei Raba with Kavanah, that's much stronger than any bracha. Any bracha you can get. One Yehi Shmei Raba has much more greatness. And actually the same thing was also by the Chafetz Chaim. The same thing he said also. That he says, why are you coming to me? They used to ask him, what should we do? And he says, just answer Yehi Shmei Raba. That's the power a person has. We have a tremendous power of just a little Yehi Shmei Raba, a little Kavanah. I want to tell you, Rabbi Kolodetsky, that's Rav Chaim Kanievsky's son-in-law. This was I think it was about half a year ago. Maybe it's a drop more. This was about half a year, could be a little more, around that time. He came to Lakewood, and they asked him, is there anything, what should we mechazik in? What should we? He spoke in the shul. And they asked, and he spoke in the shul, and he said 2 things. You should mechazik in Yehi Shmei Raba and brachas. That's what he said. We think that, how much we could do. He says, you don't realize. A person says, what? Where's he going? You have a tremendous power in Yehi Shmei Raba. I'm going to tell you another point also, is that a person sometimes he gets tired, and sometimes he's in a shul, it's coming Ma'ariv, and he's sleeping. And a boy actually told me this in the school. He said to me, he was in a minyan, and when they got the Kaddish, people going, Yehi Shmei, they like low. So he said, he wasn't embarrassed. He says, why not? And he said it loud. He said it shook up the shul. The people by the time they got to the next Yehi Shmei Raba, there was a better Yehi Shmei Raba. We don't realize, I know I was recently in a shul, I think it was about 2 weeks ago, and there was a man there, I couldn't believe it, his Yehi Shmei Raba, I don't know if I could do that loud. It was so screaming, so loud, and you know what? It gave me inspiration. When I heard his Yehi Shmei Raba, even though I'm trying with all I tried tremendous to have a lot of kavanah, but I saw that no, you could go more. If you know somebody's about to die, and you know it's pikuach nefesh, you can go all the way. A person has tremendous power to do wonders. A person doesn't. You can't imagine what a person could do. There is a famous Maisa. This is one of the famous stories of Rabbi Kiva. There are a lot of people that know the story. I'll say Bekitzer, but the Chavetz Chaim brings it down in his Sefer. And there was a Maisa with Rabbi Kiva. He saw a man carrying a tremendous load, massive load. And he says, "What are you doing?" He couldn't believe. He saw him carrying something he didn't understand. It was a load that looked like impossible for a human being to carry. It looked like a load of 10 loads. And not only that, his skin was dark, like coals. And he also was running, it says like he was running like a horse. And he told him, I commanded him, Rabbi Kiva commanded him to stop. And said, "Why are you working so hard? I'll pay your owner, please." And the man said, "Please don't stop me." He says, and then he calls that man, which is himself, he says, "I already died. And every day they send me to cut wood and burn me with it." He says, "What did you do?" Rabbi Kiva asked him. He says, "I was a tax collector and I helped the rich and I killed poor people." Rahman al-Islam. He says, and Rabbi Kiva was wondering, so why did Hashem show this picture? He saw this man walking, running. He says, he asked him, he says, "Did you hear if there's any hope for you?" He says, "Yes, I did hear. I heard in Shemayim that if I had a son, and that son would say Baruch Hu and answer, or he would say Yiskadal, Yiskadash, and people would answer Yehi Shmei Raba, they would stop him from punishments." But the man didn't know if he had a son because his wife was pregnant when he died. And I don't know if it was a son, and I don't think anybody would teach him anyway because he was a Rasha. At that moment, Rabbi Kiva accepted himself and he went to find out. And he said, "I'm going to try to teach his son." He ended up finding out where he was, and people told him. He asked the man what was his name. He told him his name. He went to the town, and Rabbi Kiva tried to find out, and people said, "Oh, such a Rasha. That man's a Rasha." They said the ground should swallow him up. They were such a wicked man. The wife was wicked. He said, "Yemach Zechroi." And he finally found out that the boy never even had a bris milah. And immediately Rabbi Kiva went and he convinced him to do bris milah. And the boy, he tried to teach him. It was such a hard to teach him. And Rabbi Kiva had to fast for 40 days. I don't know if it was in a row, not at night. And he asked Hashem, "Please help the Torah go into the boy." And a voice came out after basically he was almost giving up. And he said, "Rabbi Kiva, go and teach him." He went, taught him Torah and Shema and Shemona Esrei and benching. And then he made the boy stand before the Kahal and said Baruch Hu and Yiskadal, and they answered Baruch Hashem Baruch Halamed and Yehi Shmei Raba. And at that moment they released the dead person from punishment. He came to Rabbi Kiva in a dream, and he said these words. I'll quote the words. I'm looking at it now. Yiratzon l'fnei Hashem shetanuach datcha began Eden shetzalti oisim medina shel Gehenna. Miyad pasal Rabbi Mar Hashem Shem Chalalam Hashem Zechadav means that he basically said it should be in front of Hashem that your da should be resting in Gan Eden because you saved me from Gehenna. Imagine this man. This man was in the worst punishments, and he was punished for many years in Gehenna. And here he had a son, said Baruch Hu Yiskadal Kaddish, 2 points. And notice he did have, I saw this brought down, that Rabbi Kiva did have to teach him Torah and Shema and Shemona Esrei and benching, because it could be, if he just says it like, "Oh, Yehi Shmei Raba," and he doesn't really know what's going on, it could be it wouldn't make such an effect. He has to know a little bit. If he knows a little Torah, understands a little bit Hashem about benching, and then he says the Kaddish, it works. So that's why if a person, let's say, starts out, he needs to know a little bit. But here you see one Yehi Shmei Raba, one time, and Baruch Hu, he made one Baruch Hu. Well, what's the big deal? You go to Ma'ariv, okay, Baruch Hu, Baruch Hashem, Yiskada, and all of a sudden you don't know what one time could take a biggest Russia in the world, a Russia Marusha, totally, a very, very, very wicked Russia, and actually pull him out again. Imagine what a person can accomplish in life. He goes through life, and he starts, the second you hear what I'm saying now, he starts to say Yehi Shmei Raba with Kavana, and he doesn't do 1, 5, 10, 50, don't miss one. A few times I come, sometimes I just missed it, or I had to go to the bathroom. Remember recently I had to go to the bathroom, I missed a few, and I felt bad. I said, "Oi, I lost the zuchus." And I did something wrong, must be because I missed out in the zuchus of to get those Yehi Shmei Rabas, those Kaddish. When you cause others to say Yehi Shmei Raba, or you answer yourself Yehi Shmei Raba, what a power. And if you yourself are saying Kaddish, very important that a person should think of the taich as much as he could and me'or others to say the Yehi Shmei Raba. And you cannot imagine what you could accomplish in life. A person has on and on. I remember there was the Maisa with in Manhattan. This was a few years ago. If you remember, there was a man trying to take a van and trying to kill people in Manhattan many years. But that's about 4 years ago. And I remember the story that there was somebody's aunt was there. And he told, and I realized that in the cheder at that time they were saying they had two Kaddishes in the end of Mincha at 3 o'clock. Mamish, was about 3 o'clock, and that man started taking the van in Manhattan at 3 o'clock. And miraculously, instead of killing so many people, it was much less than when all the other. Or they expected so many people to get killed, and it was a small, very, very small amount, which was a miracle. They expected it was much. It was a nace that the tragedy was so small, and we have to realize this. We have the opportunity. Anybody who hears this, you yourself can change, rip up decrees. You can do so much. All we have to do is start now. Don't wait. Don't even wait one moment. And Be'ez Hashem, I'm going to give you everybody a bracha now. Anybody who hears this and listens, anybody who hears what I'm saying now, try to start right now. If anybody hears this recording also, you can get cards. There's Kaddish cards. It's called, I forgot the word, the Lashon of there's Kaddish cards in English. You can reach it. You can actually, anybody who wants to reach it, you can call my number up, 732-371-0147. I have many cards to give out. And anybody that wants to mechazik others, it's opportunity for zechusim. There was somebody that paid for printing of thousands of Kaddish cards, and he's giving it out. He said he knows it's tremendous zechus. And even one person that gets, or imagine one person gets inspired, and that person picks up thousands of Yehi Shmei Rabas, and he will mechazik others. The list goes on and on. And we're very close to Mashiach. There's one of the Gedolim said over that we're very, very, very close. And he said, and here we have an opportunity to make Mashiach come. If everybody would now mechazik, and mechazik yiskadav yiskada Shmei Raba, that means Hashem's name should become great and holy all over the world. You're saying, you're asking HaKadosh Baruch Hu to make Yehi Shmei Raba, his name should become great. Won't Hashem bring Mashiach? So Be'ez Hashem, we should all be zeicha through hearing this and mechaziking, that everybody right now, don't wait, and answer every word, mechazik it, and Be'ez Hashem, we should have Be'ez Hashem, Mashiach, come in a good way. B'mheira, b'yameinu.